Wonderful. Great. Welcome, everybody. So I've been so thrilled, or we've been so thrilled, to bring you all together here for two reasons. The first one is that I wrote a book in German. That book launched quite a conversation, and a publisher, a wonderful publisher called Mullmann, translated it into English. Actually, the translators in the room are actually the editor. Can I get a hands up? Thank you so much, Muriel, for all your effort and your patience. Yes, round of applause, I would say. And I'll tell you just for 1 second about the book in a minute. But the second reason I'm here is that we all experience a period of multi-crises, right? And so it's extremely hard to focus just on one thing, right? We know that we need to deal with climate change, but we also know that there's a war. We know that we need to think about inflation and recession and what that does to the division in our societies. And all of that happens at the same time. And with my do-head, for those of you who haven't worked with us or who are not familiar with us, we're passionate about the idea that it's about societal leaders and business leaders to take on the responsibility and see the purpose and also the economic and innovation opportunity to drive positive change. And we're also thinking about young entrepreneurs and what they can do for their future and all of ours. So that's a little bit my two hats that I'm wearing tonight. You'll see, or you hear already, that I'm actually not as eloquent as I usually am, or maybe I'm not eloquent, but at least I'm more out of breath. And I'm still feeling a little bit under the weather because I had COVID, and I'm back up. I'm negative and all of that, but I'm not fully recovered. And so this is great news for all of you, because I'll do the intro and then now hand over to my much more brilliant wife, partner, and co-founder, Catherine, and this incredible group of friends and people that are here. So you'll have an amazing evening, and I'll be somewhere lying there in the corner and listening as well. So some of you might think, oh my God, why does the world need another book? The publisher wanted me to write a book, and I thought about it for a couple of years. And over the COVID period, I realized that with everything that was going on, there's a division in society that I had the feeling we're not talking about at all. And that division in society is that with all the complexity, the hardship, the question, the turmoil, a friend of mine who's a transformation specialist calls it us being in the dishwasher or in the washing machine. The old is not yet out, the new is not yet in. There's a fascinating thing that's happening. There's around the world millions of people, and probably this crowd is 100% that group of people, that are getting up, that are being a bit courageous, trying things a bit differently, and actually do things differently for themselves and for their sphere of influence. Trying to actually find at least a piece of a solution to a piece of a big problem. And there's millions of them. So we don't need the future tellers with the long beards and the fancy scarves up on big stages to tell you what the world will look like in 50 years, because there's millions of people like this incredible bunch that is redefining the world already. But there's also something else that's happening. There's many more people, hundreds of millions of people, in your society or community, in your business that you're leading, maybe even in your family, that feel incredibly afraid, feel hopeless, and basically retreat to the private. It doesn't matter whether they're rich or poor or super well educated or not, but it's a phenomenon that's happening all across the world, that you have this division in inspirational, courageous people that are taking action and in those that are really afraid of what's going to happen. And the problem is we're not telling positive stories of what actually is happening right now and what can take place. And so the reason why I wrote this book is to celebrate 70, 80 incredible people and places that are metaphors for what all of us can do. And if I have one wish for tonight, is that hopefully this was enjoyable and fun, and that you go up afterwards to talk to Catherine, to my best friend and co-founder, Reuven, to all of these amazing folks here, but also that you think about what is it that you are already doing or could do, or whom else could you inspire to get out of the hopelessness and into action. That would be my hope for tonight. So that's pretty much all my oxygen that I have. The last bit is that I have to, before I hand over to you, introduce this great group of people. So, and I'll do it just very simply from left to right. So these are all role models for me, but they're also friends, which is probably a huge privilege. Dr. Cilla Elworthy probably doesn't need an introduction, 3 times Nobel Peace Prize nominee, has launched a whole range of organizations. The Mighty Heart is your latest book and latest project, and I imagine you'll briefly talk about this. Tara Golchan, who is heading education globally for the Jane Goodall Institute. When we started working with Jane, I don't know, 15 years ago, that's how long our relationship sort of dates back, and we've had a lot of fun since. Ipsi, and you know, Ipsi, we're working so closely together that I don't even know your family name. Patja, Ipsi Patja, sorry about that. Ipsi is in the leadership of Count Us In and is driving engagement around getting 1 billion people to take small-scale climate action from around the world. Seth Tabatsnik, who sits on our board, as Michael as well, is an incredible philanthropist, investor, sort of has a bunch of places around the world that are dealing with the question of health from soil to soul. How do we deal with nutrition? How do we deal with engagement with each other and our well-being? Michael Norton, who had a room full of 150 crazy Brits yesterday, here singing Happy Birthday out loud. We came in as Continentals, we're like, oh my God, they're all gonna get sick. So 80th birthday on Saturday. Can we give him a round of applause? I think has launched about 50 organizations, some of which are huge, some of which are small, and never ceases to amaze me how curious you are still and open for every weird idea and to get it going. And Neil Dunn, who is an incredible business leader and CEO, who's actually a couple of years ago decided to start again, leave a sort of a corporate board leadership role and get into solving the problem of microplastics, CEO of Polymateria. A huge inspiration, amazing that you're here. Have a great evening, you all.
Thank you. Well, the good news is there's not much more left for me to say because it's up to our wonderful panel. And Florian briefly introduced us to this big question of the many crises that are going on in the world, and at the same time, maybe everyone in here, but also a lot of the people that at least I speak to, and when I speak to them, they say they do the same, currently also grapple with what's actually happening inside of me and how did those past already 2.5 years of intense change, what did that do to me and with me, and how do I now continue from here? And now there's even more happening in the world around us, which means we probably need to root even deeper inside ourselves to have the strength and the courage and all that's needed to keep doing or to start doing or do differently. And I think that's what we're going to hear from you guys, and we want to invite your perspectives with regards to looking into the world, but maybe also looking inside and what you currently think is the most important topic or issue that we should be discussing, that we should do more about, that we should care about. And then once we have heard that and taken all these inspirational perspectives in, we're actually going to turn it to everybody in the room. We're going to have an interactive session, but I'll explain that when we get there so that everybody gets to talk and exchange as well. And then we'll do a closing round with the panelists sharing back from the discussions with you. So why don't we get started on the far end over there in the opposite direction of our introductions. Neil, you have your mic?
I have one here.
Or you have your own mic, maybe even?
Yes.
Are you ready?
I'll give
With
it a
this
go.
very, very broad question, to be fair, but I think it would give, just the opportunity to really hear your perspective, because I know you've also personally gone through quite a change in career and focus, and have a pretty clear mission that you're behind now.
Yeah, I don't think anyone ever tells you how difficult it's going to be when you set out to create a clean tech business or an innovation, and you look at a Tesla, or you look at Impossible, you look at Oatly, and you try to emulate what they have done. There's very few books on this that you can pick up and read. But what I have, I think, reconciled myself with over the last couple of years in particular is the need to have, as a leader, a really profound growth mindset. So an ability to really self-actualize in the first instance, but also collectively be very frank and honest with yourself, your partners, and your team around what it takes to move the needle on some of these really big issues. Florian and I, last time we spoke in May, we talked about culture and the type of culture you need to create in businesses that are going to undergo incredible scrutiny. All comes back to integrity. So you have to have integrity in your science in the first instance, but also your culture most importantly. And trying to create a non-hierarchical, non-siloed way of enshrining integrity in everything you do is probably your most fundamental, foundational challenge. And the reason for that is, going back to my first point, when you start to succeed and you become the next big thing or close to the next big thing, you find yourself in a firefight with a system that does not want to change. And the only thing that will allow you to get through that fight is having facts and science and evidence and data on your side, and that your people are your most powerful advocates. If I can, I just one or two other points as well. Diversity gets an awful lot of airtime, and the other thing I think, in particular over the last 2 years, that we've realized is that you're only as strong as your weakest link. So your capability, but also behavior, and the type of people you need to bring into an organization to really understand your blind spots in a more profound way, and be curious about alternative views, and brave enough to bring that into your business and into your organization. So it's not about quotas, it's not about HR ticking boxes, it's about as you become a global player, how do you really bring that diversity of mind and behavior into your business in a way that creates synergies. And I think also the final thing is you got to look at what are the big things you need to do to shake up the system. So with limited resources, whether you're seed funded, Series A funded, Series B funded, whatever, there's big levers within the system, whether it's consumer behavior change or, in our case, regulation and standards, where if you're brave enough to do things like open source your IP and create new goalposts, you can give legislators, give countries ways by which they can enshrine legislation that links the outcomes you're able to prove as a business to the overall policy direction for countries as big as India and China and so on. So coming back to something like plastic pollution, those types of initiatives are incredibly important. And as a disruptor, you need to be prepared to do those things, but have the muscles internally that allow you to be able to create the ripple effect and kind of punch above your weight. So let me stop there. But I think all of that has come through just having an openness and a growth mindset. If you asked me that question 2 years ago, I wouldn't have said a lot of those things. But we've had to figure it out pretty quickly, to be effective, to be successful.
And I think you are successful, and you're holding one of your
Oh
products
yes,
in your
sorry, I
hands.
should. I'm a
Maybe
terrible
we can-
marketer. This is the world's first self-destructing coffee cup. So we've one for each panel member. It's cheaper to make than plastic. It's come through Imperial Innovations in London. You're all welcome to visit our labs. It's time controlled, so you can use it, reuse it. This one's set to act like a cup for 3 years. Then it becomes a wax, and we're the only company in the world who've got this fully back to nature in mesophilic real-world conditions within a year. So this afternoon I was visiting Grundon, who are the biggest recycler in this part of the world, showing that if these materials come back into the MRF, into the mechanical recycling facility, that you can create bracelets and other paraphernalia applications. It can be both recyclable and biodegradable, which kind of defines convention. So again, I have one of these bracelets for each of the panel members as well as a little memento. So thank you for helping me with my marketing.
You're so welcome, and thanks so much for sharing and bringing those along, and congratulations for what you've done there. Much needed field of innovation for sure. I would say let's do a round of applause. And actually going to mix it up a little bit because I'm realizing that we somehow have a male and then a female section here on the panel. So maybe we just, take turns, and that would bring us to Ipsy and your perspectives.
Thanks so much, Catherine. And really, really wonderful to be here tonight with everyone and amongst this panel, which I have to say I'm honored as well as a little bit intimidated. But I've said that now, so that'll get rid of some of the nervousness. I want to start today and just kind of share a little bit of a story going back to 2016. I had just moved back to Mumbai, which is where I'm from, a place where I called home. And I imagine many of you might have been to Mumbai, but in case those who haven't, it's a coastal city on the western side of India, 20 plus million people, extremely vibrant, super diverse, the best food ever, and essentially one of the coolest places, but I'm obviously biased. On top of that, every year in Bombay, we, as locals call it, we experience really, really bad flooding. It's just part of the cycle. And that means that homes are completely underwater. There's tons and tons of destruction, if you think about it from an infrastructural perspective, from livelihoods, so on. And not only that, I think the specific story I wanted to share was there was one morning when my parents and I were driving on what's Marine Drive, so otherwise known as something called the Queen's Necklace. It's a really long kind of coastal road in Bombay where it's just like it's where tens and thousands of people come and hang out every weekend, and it's a gathering spot. It's really kind of a social space. Yet essentially what had happened was that the ocean had kind of vomited. So a lot of kind of the waste and plastics and so on from the ocean, you could just see that on the pavement, and it took days and weeks for that to be cleared up. So these sort of things, as we know, are going to be more and more common due to climate change. And I think I was sitting there, I had just moved back to India after getting a master's. I was this kind of idealist, determined, very hopeful young person trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life and trying to figure out what does that mean for my career, and essentially just feeling really, really hopeless and sad because we have 20 million people, yet a disconnect of no one really talking about what the solutions are, the day-to-day conversations, and it really, revolve around climate or environmental change, just a little bit of just cleanup stuff. So what I did was I took a deep breath, and so that's kind of one of the first things I wanted to say is really, I think in terms of figuring out where we want to focus in a time of turmoil. And 2016 was before this was before the US elections of 2016. I already felt like we were in a world of turmoil. And before, of course, then the pandemic and all the other things that have happened since. And I really kind of focused on what is it that I can do as an individual, and kind of where are the places that I can look for hope, and really kind of be a source of change in my own little way. And I really liked what Florian said right at the start, was about being a piece of the solution to a piece of the problem, right? And I think that's essentially what we all want to try and figure out, like, what is my sweet spot, what is my niche, what can I figure out, and what can I do? And I feel really hopeful now, 6 years later, being a part of a movement where we are trying to really bring people together to talk about climate action on a day-to-day basis. And that's kind of the message I really want to share today. Is first, it really starts with yourself or myself. So we are all kind of people in our organizations, as part of something bigger, part of our communities, part of the clubs that we belong to, and so on. And really, I think what we can do is start. And the second thing I would say is find ways to share that with others, because I think once it's not just about individuals taking action, but then also what that means when you add it up and think about collective action, because what we're really trying to show is that when people come together, we can make something really magical happen, and really special happen. And again, of course, you need the science and you need the evidence to back it up, but I think we have that already. But we need to just kind of have that repetition and the community feel around it, and then the sharing. And I feel like at the moment we have to really take advantage of technology and where we are with media and social media, share that, talk about it in really kind of ways that feel personal to you, because if we won't be solving a problem unless it feels like something that we deeply care about. One of the things that Countess said that we say a lot is protect what you love. And so that's essentially kind of the message that we want to be bringing out to the world, where you have every employer, sports team, musician, artist, so on, really talking about this and repeating, because this is essentially kind of the very important bit where we can all do our bit, and every person counts. So,
Thank you so much. And also thanks for sharing that very personal story of going through a moment of struggle and then turning that into a very positive, action-oriented way forward. And you mentioned being part of pieces of the solution, and there's one man here that has been doing just that, I would say, at least 60 years. I don't know exactly when you started, maybe even more. But you've created many pieces of solution all around the world. And yeah, would be really excited to hear also how, at this moment, Michael, how you look at what's important.
Yeah, so I'd like to actually start in Mumbai and end with marketing. So Mumbai, about 20-something years ago, I was helping set up the Charities Aid Foundation in India. And around that bit of the coast that you were talking about is Chowpatty Beach. And next to Chowpatty Beach, I visited people in a housing unit. It was super ultra luxury. So you go through the courtyard with perhaps a broken down car parked in it, rats scampering over a pile of bricks. You go into the building where there's a falling down wooden staircase with all the wires loose, and you knock on the door, and when you get into the door, into the flat, it's all gold-plated, marble, brilliant, wonderful. And the difference between private affluence and public squalor had never been so apparent to me. Equally, the Ambani family have a tower block overlooking Dharavi, which is Asia's largest slum, think Slumdog Millionaire. And this world of inequality is a world which is not going to solve its problems. But I don't want to talk about individual issues because it's a competition. Is inequality more serious than climate change or plastic pollution or kleptocracy or warfare or terrorism or what? They're all important and they're all actually interconnected. But what I wanted to talk to you about was the importance of engaging young people in the solution. Last night we had 4 young activists sitting here talking about what they were doing. But I want to tell you about someone who was 6 years old when he started his journey in activism. He was called Ryan, and he was a blue-collar child in a town near Toronto. And he was at school, and his teacher was talking about the problems of water in the world and how many people had to carry water, often dirty water, for their daily needs. And his 6-year-old brain, there was a bit of a disconnect because he could see the freshwater fountain, that he could get as much water as he wanted whenever he wanted. And he couldn't understand why it was that people like him were struggling to find clean water. So he had a brainstorm, he had a big idea. I'm going to build a well, he said. And he thought to himself, it'll cost about $100, so I will collect 100. So, no, he went home and he went to his mum and said, Mum, can I have $100, please? And his mum said, no way, we can't afford it, but speak to your dad. And he said to his dad, when his dad came home from work, can I have $100? And again, the same answer. But he persisted, and pester power is something that actually works. In the end, his parents said, no, you can't have the money, you can earn the money. So washing the dishes, cleaning the lawn, helping his dad clean the car, doing odd jobs, doing his homework, whatever it was, he soon amassed $100 in a cardboard box. He took it to Water Can, which is the Canadian water NGO, and said, I've got $100, can I build a well? Now, the person who interacted with him should have been given the sack for this. He said, no, Ryan, it costs $2,000 to build a well. Ryan said, never mind, I'll just go and earn it. So he went back and he engaged friends at school, parents and others, and soon they collected $2,000. It got out into the press, and someone offered to pay for Ryan to go to the opening of the well in Kenya. And at the opening of the well, Ryan said, this is the proudest moment of my life. He was wrong. This was the start of his new life. It was a beginning, and there were so many more proud moments that would come afterwards. He became an impassioned water activist. He spoke at schools to engage young people. He raised enough money, I think, to affect the lives of over 1 million people by the age of 15. I think he's now about 23, 24 years old. He's spoken at the United Nations. A 6-year-old from a poor background can have such an influence on the world. One person getting started doing something. We can all do that. And I urge you to think of you, your companies, your staff, your families, the children, the schools, and to start to engage young people in the solution. Because if they get engaged, we have to get engaged. But we owe it to them as well. But it is their future that we're building. Now, the bit of marketing I just wanted to do was, I too have written a book. It was launched here last night, and it's called Fixing the Planet. It's got 40 different ways in which we are trashing the world that we live in. As I say, they're all important, and I think they're all interconnected. And there are a few free copies for you left, and if you don't get any, just order it on Amazon. My publisher will be delighted.
Thank you so much. So let's turn back here, Tara. Florian mentioned already the journey with Jane Goodall and you, and the amazing work that you're doing with the Jane Goodall Institute has been journeying with us for a long time already. And yeah, just very excited to be here today together and hear from you.
Thank you. Yes, it's lovely to be here this evening. And I was struggling with the points I should make because having done this journey with Jane, there's so many things that I can talk about. But I just wanted to share one thing, a few things with you. So Jane travels 300 days a year. And when I've been on those journeys with her, the question she gets asked the most is, how can you still have hope for this planet? When the world is in such a mess, how can you have hope? Now, one of her reasons for hope, which I'm totally committed to, is the determination of youth. And it was interesting listening to Michael, because that is an area where we have seen so many positive stories and so much happy narrative. And years ago, when I first started working for Jane, I was really fortunate to get a meeting, which I thought was fortunate at the time, with the Minister for the Environment in the UK. So I said, oh my God, we've got this meeting. I'm going to see the Minister of the Environment. And I was so excited. I went along to 10 Downing Street. I presented to the Minister, thinking this is our chance. Anyway, when I'd finished, he turned around and he said to me, Tara, you should go home. I said, what? Why? He said, because your program's never going to work. So I said, but why would you say that? He said, because you're trying to do too many things. You're trying to get young people to look after the planet, care for the human community, and bring animals into it. There's no way that's going to happen. You're wasting your time. Anyway, suffice it to say, we're now in over 70 countries globally, and the reason I tell this story is so important for me is not to demean the minister, but it's actually to tell young people, never let anyone put you off what you want to do. So I have a strange dichotomy that I've lived with, where on one side of my life, I have these amazing young people who can teach many adults about looking after the planet. And Michael's story is a great example. We had, with the Nepal earthquake disaster, one of our schools, 2 children, they were aged 10, managed to raise £20,000 for the Nepal earthquake disaster on behalf of our Roots and Shoots program. And yet when we were going to some of the companies and the ministries trying to get that money, we struggled with it. So my experience, and I can only speak from the heart, is that dealing with the young people has been a joy for me. I've been so lucky to be working on that area. But actually dealing with the corporates and the ministries and the governments of various countries globally and in the UK has been much more of a challenge. So if someone asks me where my hope lies, I tend to agree with Jane on that one point, that it is the determination of youth that has given me a lot of hope for the future. And then the other point I wanted to raise is that we often go by, people often come to me and say, so what's your program? What's the program? And I keep going back and saying, it's not a program, it's a way of life. And that's why I think education is so important, because from the age of 3 or 4, that's when we're young enough to love things. We love gardens, we love nature, we love animals. I know I certainly did. But I think a lot of that gets lost, especially as we get older and we grow up. And let's face it, we're living in a world of technology now. I mean, I have a teenage son. I can barely get him off his phone. It's really difficult. And he's saying to me, but this is my life. This is how we communicate. So the days of actually being connected with nature and being connected with the planet, I think are long gone. So for me, it's very much not about a top-down approach, but literally a bottoms-up approach. If we can start young and instill those values, and it doesn't matter what professions young people, they're going to go into they're great professions, whether they're lawyers, doctors, environmentalists, nurses, agriculture, it doesn't matter what the industry is, but if they have a respect and a love for the planet and the people that inhabit it, then I think we've done our job and we've done it well. So that's literally all I was going to say. And just one last point, it is about the simple actions, because I find if you say to people, we're trying to tackle climate change, everyone says, too big, not going to worry about that. Robert Swan, who's a very, very famous Arctic explorer, he said to me, the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. And I think that's absolutely brilliant, because a lot of people think the issues are too big and they don't bother with them. But if we make the simple everyday actions every day, and everyone is conscious enough to do that, then we really can make an impact while governments and corporates are sorting out their own work. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Tara, for the encouraging words. And I think yesterday we also spoke about the ripple effects that each of us can have, and to never underestimate what one person can do and inspire in others as well. And I heard you speak about connecting with Earth and with the environment, and I think that's a perfect transition, Seth, to you, because that's what you spend a lot of your energy on.
Great, thank you. So yeah, while everyone's been talking, I suddenly had this realization that today I've been very active. I started my day, I got up, I had lots of work to catch up on, and from there I've either been on media or connecting with people, had people around me all day, and I realized that all day I haven't just taken a moment to be with myself, to land in my body, to breathe, and to notice my breath. So I thought maybe I could do that now and invite all of you to do that with me, noticing that we all showed up and, you know, straight into conversation and engagement. So I'd love to invite you all just to close your eyes and get comfortable on your chair. Whenever you're ready, just allowing your eyes to close. And just taking a deep breath in through your nose and into your belly. And relaxing with your out breath. Allowing your jaw to relax, your eyelids to relax. There's nowhere you need to be. There's nothing in this moment you need to do other than to be here with your breath. Listening to your body. And breathing in through your nose and into your belly. And just relaxing with each out breath. And whenever you're ready, just coming back into the space with your eyes open. Thank you. So, I guess just picking up on that piece around the earth, nature. We're all part of nature. Our bodies are the intelligence of nature. What we experience in our body is no different to what's being experienced in the world, to the earth. You know, speaking to Florian earlier, I had COVID a few weeks ago, and just having time with my body, to feel pain in different parts of my body, in my head, in my joints, and actually just being forced into spending time with myself, with my body, with my pain. I wasn't doing that before. I was being more of a human doing than a human being, and being given that gift to actually slow down and take time for myself. I don't do that enough, and it was great to actually be forced to do that. Most of the work I do is to do with well-being. I have a retreat center that I run in the UK, and where well-being interacts with the earth is also around food systems. You know, the food that we eat needs to be the food that is healthy for ourselves and for the planet. And I see so much of that disconnect in terms of where we source our food from, the types of food we put into our body and how we put it into our body. And yeah, there isn't one issue that we need to solve. There are so many issues. We're all a piece of the puzzle. There's no one way that anyone can tell you that, you know, you need to go out and make a difference in your life in the world, because we're all part of this huge puzzle that, you know, there's 8 billion souls that have showed up on the earth at this time, and we're all here for a slightly different reason, and yet it's all connected. And why I work with the food system is because food connects us with ourselves, it connects us with the earth, and it connects us with each other. And, you know, given where we are as a species at the moment with, you know, what feels like a kind of looming collapse of an economic system, whether it's, you know, in 2 years, 5 years, 50 years, we don't know. But what we do know on some level is that putting profit ahead of people and the planet on a finite planet just doesn't work. We need new experiments that can guide us towards alternative economies that prioritize life on Earth. And, you know, if everything collapses and we stop buying stuff and we're not able to fuel this economy, we still need to eat. We still need food in order to survive, and we need to grow food and eat in a way that also looks after non-humans, you know, recognizing that we need a food system that looks after biodiversity, that looks after all other animals, and it's not only a food system for us, it's a food system for all. So that's my focus, but it's also, you know, everyone has their own focus, and, you know, we learn what our focus is by listening to our bodies and taking time to be still. So that's all I'll say for now. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for giving us time to breathe and taking a moment there. And I think as we're closing the panel with Scylla, turning a little more inwards from an outwards perspective. And I assume that's what we're going to hear from you, Scylla, as well, because I know you've been spending a lot of your brain power and time and energy on exactly that question. So yeah, looking forward to hearing your thoughts there.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you, Catherine and Florian. Okay. I just want to thank you, Catherine and Florian, for bringing us all here. And actually, I'm going to start at the other end of the spectrum, because if we look at our world as a bird would look at it at the moment, what we would see is that decisions, big decisions, are being made by the left brain. And I expect you know what I mean by the left brain. The left brain is linear, it measures, it's very achievement orientated, it gets things done. And it's really the ethos that drives most of the decisions that are being made. The right brain, by contrast, looks at the whole picture. The right brain sees what is going on, picks it up through just exactly what Seth was talking about. The right brain has an ear and a sense for feeling. What are people feeling? And where's the energy? And sadly, what we're dealing with at the moment is major decisions being made by the left brain without the considerations of the right brain. I see a lot of people nodding. And a lot of those decisions that are being made are very bad for us all, as we've been hearing. What happens when we turn to a balance of the left and the right brain? That's when we get activists who understand the global problems, decide on a part of it that appeals to them to do something about, and get started with a clear goal, with masses of energy, but using their right brain, listening. And so having worked with a lot of peace initiatives all around the world, what I find is that those activists who are most effective are the people who've done what we would call the inner work, whether that's meditation, whether it's self-awareness of some kind, whether it's looking at what breaks your heart and acting on that. Now, this led me, just before the pandemic broke, I got a kind of premonition that something was coming toward the human race that was so big that we were going to need every single human skill that we can muster. And most of us don't have many. In other words, we were going to need to face anger, dislocation, grief, death, and misery straight in the face. I had no idea what it was. And I sat down and wrote for 3 weeks and wrote something called The Mighty Heart, because I believe that the heart has the wisdom that we need now. And that got made into an online 10-module course. And we had the enormous good fortune that it was early taken up by a very large multinational corporation in retail. And that was very much through Catherine and through Florian. And this is a company called H&M, and I can say this publicly. They took on this online course, put it to their senior executives, thinking that the senior executives might say, oh, not that self-awareness stuff. And it went down so well that they've now spread it through major parts of their company, right down to branch level, where H&M store people are learning these skills. So it's a 10-module course, and I just want to, you can't see this, but it's in a U form. And module 1 is what breaks your heart, because that's where the energy is, and that's where we start. But it goes through all the issues that we need to tackle to get active, to get able. Namely, the inner critic. How many people in this room don't have an inner critic? See? It's a plague that makes us feel we're not good enough. Why bother? We haven't got the skills. We don't know what we're doing. So just don't even bother. Don't get started. We need to develop a dialogue with that inner critic. There's no point trying to silence it. It just comes back. We need to sit down and talk to it at 3 o'clock in the morning when it wakes us up and troubles us with its criticisms. We need to listen to it, ask it what it really wants us to know, because that very voice knows, in my experience, exactly the truth that I need to know at that moment. Anyway, we take people through how to develop the ability to listen to another person in a way that isn't me working out how clever I am, or I know one of those, and all those things we mutter to ourselves when people are speaking, but actually listen to what is the feeling, what's driving them, what do they need, and that's when actual negotiation, mediation can take place. When have I got a moment? Very quick moment. I was asked by the chairman of a very big international company to address their senior executives. And I said to them, gentlemen, the first thing we're going to do this morning is listening. And they looked, oh, for heaven's sake, we listen to our teams the whole time. We know all about that. And I said, well, let's just check. So I put them through a listening exercise to see how well they picked up what somebody else was really saying. And so that's one of the greatest skills that we need in this world to equip us to do what the pandemic, what the war, and all the challenges that we've heard about so clearly this evening, if we want to be able to deal with those challenges, we need to equip ourselves with those inner skills.
Thank you so much, Celeste. Thank you, everybody, so much for sharing your perspectives, your stories, your insights. And as promised, we want to make everybody in this room part of the conversation. And how we're going to do that, it's super easy. Each table has a head on each side. And we have our panelists here who will join your table heads as your conversation guides, facilitators, whatever you want to call them. So if you're looking to us right now in the front rows, you'll just turn around your chairs so that you'll have the opportunity to have a table conversation. And then each table should have, and if not, you just raise your hand and we'll come around, should have one piece of printed A4 paper, like this. And you'll have one of two questions on your table. So when your host is there, and even the hosts don't know which question you got, you can turn it around, you can take a look. One question is more around what Scylla just started, which is skills and mindsets that we need. And the other question is more around how can positive storytelling be part of the solution. And so we'll invite you to have about 15 minutes of conversation on the table, and then we'll have a closing reflection round back here. So I wish everybody a great exchange and conversation. And our panelists get to pick. You can just choose any of the tables, and everybody can turn so you have your rounds. Thank you.